I speak in assumptions, opinions, and facts. So I'm gonna give you some fact and just jump on what y'all said earlier about what's going on right now and how they've been always wanting to go after Iran.
Yeah.
If you remember about it, it's been months and months now. I said I had a book coming out. It'll soon be out. I'll make sure y'all get a copy. But I'm gonna give you a fact. The Iraq war was based on what's happening now. Bibi and the far right politicians of Israel has always wanted to take out what we call the funding network for Hezbollah and Hamas. And at the time, it was Saddam that was the primary funder of Hamas. And so the Iraq war was created because Bibi and the far right at the time wanted to go in and do exactly what they're doing right now. But Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, and all people, Newt Gingrich was part of this too, because he was what you call the Defense Policy Board. That's an advisory group to the Secretary of Defense. Newt Gingrich said, oh, no, you can't do this because of the fact we will not be able to take the pushback with all the killings and carnage that would take place if we let Israel do that. So what we'll do, because he had the right group in there at the time, the neocons, he had the right group in there at the time to go in and say, we'll do this for you, but we're going to do it by warfare. We're going to create this war on terror. And then what we're going to do, we're going to go after Iraq first, because we have what we call, under the Clinton administration, a regime policy, to take out Saddam. We're going to do that. And oh, by the way, also, we're going to find an excuse to go in. They couldn't come up with any excuses at the time. They were using, we had some watches, and I know Matt and Kristen probably understand this, Operation Northern Watch and Southern Watch. After the first Gulf War, we were protecting the Kurds in the north and the Shia in the south. And they even went as far to say, maybe we'll shoot down one of our own helicopters and blame it on Saddam, so we can go in and get him. So the bottom line, and I just want to jump on what y'all said, this has always been in the plan, but we held Bibi at the time and the far right politicians from doing it and said, we'll take care of it. And unfortunately, 9/11, now I'm not a conspiracy theory when they say, hey, it was an inside job, but you take this to the bank. I saw you not verbal. This is a fact, though. This is the fact what I'm about to say. Unfortunately, they were happy it happened. Mm-hmm. And why were they happy? Because it gave them the true rationale to be able to start their war on terror and go after Iraq first, then Syria, and then save Iran for last. We'll talk more about that because they were scared of Iran because Iran is such a large country and they do have some response power, as we're going to soon see if they truly decide to respond again, that being Israel's side to respond. So now I'll shut up and that'll probably start the conversation. And I'm going to sit back and watch Chris and Matt.
Yeah, talk about now, because that is so now forward to today and where we are. And I think to me, what it looks like as a civilian person is that Iran is taking the high road.
Absolutely.
Am I wrong, Matt? Or Chris?
No. Go ahead, Chris. You want to go?
No, I was just going to agree there. The Iran has been incredibly restrained. I mean, Israel has been beaten up on Iran for years now. It's been killing Iranian scientists. It has been hitting Iran with cyber attacks. It has been the aggressor in the region. And it has even been killing Iranian personnel when they are transiting or in Syria. So for anybody in mainstream media or in Washington, D.C. to claim that Israel is the victim and Iran is the aggressor, they have it backwards. What do you think, Matt?
Right, and then just more proximate, the more immediate events that have occurred. One, the genocide in Gaza, of course, but the continual attacks by Israel against Iranian personnel in Syria, and most recently on April 1st, when in just an amazing and brazen insult to international law, Israel attacked the Iranian consulate in Damascus, and the Iranians waited 10 days. The Iranians were hoping for some type of resolution or some type of action by the United Nations to address Israel's attack on the Iranian consulate. And when that didn't occur, they launched this attack over the weekend. And to show how restrained it was, how it really was a demonstration more of a cautionary gesture than anything else. They announced to nations in the region, including the United States, 3 days ahead of time that they were going to launch these attacks. And then when it's funny because Dennis was the one who told me the attacks were going on, he called me and I'm talking to him and he says they've launched the attacks. And I said, okay, so I'm thinking, I was driving. I was thinking when I get home, I'll see us on I'll watch this on television. And Dennis says, it's about 6 hours before the drones get there. So not only that, this is what's completely unprecedented, because giving notice can sometimes occur. This is what the Iranians actually did in 2020 when they responded to the American assassination of General Soleimani. They gave notice that they were going to attack. The U.S. knew that those ballistic missiles were going to be going towards El Asad Air Base, and we were able to get all our troops into bunkers. So the Iranians have done this before. And so they launched this attack as a cautionary gesture, as a warning. They knew most of those drones and missiles were going to get shot down. They knew it was unlikely they were going to do much damage. They knew it was unlikely that they would cause any type of civilian harm. But the gesture in itself is a double-edged gesture. There's a very real danger in this. Any nation that can launch 330 drones and missiles as a cautionary tale, as an act, as a warning, saying, we don't care if you shoot these all down because we have so many more. And I think that's the point that's getting lost in the West in their celebration of this great Israeli victory of shooting down 99% of Iranian drones and missiles, is that the Iranians didn't care about that. They threw those things up as a sacrifice, and they have thousands and thousands more. And the fact that in the West and in Israel, that's being ignored is a degree of arrogance and ignorance and hubris that is incredibly dangerous.
So what are their capabilities? Like what could they do? Because I remember seeing something at some point where I got the understanding that they could level Haifa. What can they do?
Between go ahead, Dennis.
No, you got it. Go ahead, Matt. I'll comment.
Between their own capabilities, missile fleets and drone fleets that number in the tens of thousands, essentially. The idea that the Iranians have been preparing for this conflict for decades, just as they've been preparing to, say, fight the American Navy in the Straits of Hormuz for decades, right? So they have focused on this. They have prepared for this. And they also have allies. So they have allies in Hezbollah, who has at least 100,000 missiles and rockets that they can fire from southern Lebanon into Israel. They have allies in Syria. Who's Syria's ally? Russia. This is where it starts to get very dangerous. Who also has troops in Syria alongside of Russia? The Americans, right? So not only are there great capabilities that the Iranians have, and I'm sure Chris can talk about a bunch of other capabilities like their cyber capabilities and other things, as well as the threat of, say, economic warfare. Israel is already having great deal of economic distress over these last 6 months. But the idea that not only can the capabilities of Iran are something that may be underestimated, but the dangers of escalation are something that, the risk of escalation here is something that can't be ignored.
In regards to that, when you mentioned what are their capabilities, I'll just share a couple things with you. As Matt alluded to earlier about their response after General Soleimani's death and assassination, we'll call it. Yeah. If you remember during the Iran nuclear deal, why folks were saying, it was a bad deal, and Trump comes in and gets rid of the deal. The reason they did that is because of the fact they wanted Iran to get rid of their ballistic missiles, because they are very powerful. They don't need a nuclear weapon, to be quite frank with you, to destroy. When you say they can destroy Jerusalem and Tehran. Yeah. I mean, not Tehran, but the capital, Tel Aviv, yeah. Right. Their ballistic missiles are so good, and some of their other weapon systems are so good and sophisticated and accurate. All you have to do is just ask Russia, who's being provided, some of those weapon systems. So that should tell you right there. So they have the power to do it. But as Christensen alluded to earlier, they've been very restrained. they've been very restrained, but they have the capability to really put out a lot of harm. And that's why we didn't, when Trump was saying, oh, if they attack us, we're going to retaliate. That's why they didn't, because when they saw those ballistic missiles, and as Matt mentioned, the only reason we found out about it is because of the fact that Iran alerted the factions in Iraq that we were going to bomb this particular base. They didn't necessarily alert the Americans, they alerted Iraq. And then Iraq alerted the Americans, and who were able to get under into bunkers and get some of the stuff out and some of the personnel away. And so what I can tell you, Iran means business because they're tired of being restrained, just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Kristen?
Well, I'm curious as to where we go from here, because Israel has promised to escalate. Israel has promised to hit Iran. And I wonder how the Biden administration is going to not get directly involved, because the Biden administration, according to news reports, has said quietly to the Israelis that it doesn't want a direct role in whatever Israel's planning. But I don't see, once the stuff starts flying, I don't see a way that the United States is not involved. So I'd ask Matt and Dennis, how do you guys see us not being a direct party to whatever Israel does, or actually laying down the law and say, Israel, no, don't do this. You got lucky this time. Let's keep eye for an eye, and let's call it quits there.
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't see a pathway where the United States is not involved. Certainly, the statements coming out across Washington, D.C., they all got the memo, because we hear this word over and over again, ironclad.
Yeah.
Right. The commitment to Israel, ironclad. Today, I heard the spokesman at the State Department, Matt Miller, describe it as sacrosanct. Right. So this sacred commitment to Israel, right? It's holy, it's religious. It's bound by a divine aspect. So I don't know how you get past that. You as well as the fact that the overt commitment by the United States, regardless of what the White House is supposedly saying about how we said we're not going to support an Israeli attack. One, the United States is very clear that it will support Israel regardless of what happens. We also have to remember as well then that the use of the word offensive and defensive has no meaning whatsoever to the policymakers in Washington, D.C. They will describe any attack as defensive. So Israeli attacks into Iran will be described as defensive attacks. These are attacks that are meant to preclude another Iranian attack. This is an attack meant to make sure that Iran can't attack us again. They have used that wording over and over again, not just this administration, but pretty much every American administration in my lifetime, at least going back through Ronald Reagan, has used that description of any military action around the world by the U.S. as defensive. We've seen that this past year, these last 6 months, where U.S. airstrikes into Yemen, which have, I think, been well more than 100 at this point, between fixed-wing drone and missile strikes, have all been described as defensive. So I just don't see a pathway, to answer Chris, where the United States is not involved in this. And then, of course, there's that really, really danger. Ken Klippenstein at The Intercept had a good article yesterday or 2 days ago where he laid out how many nations are actually involved in this. And 16 countries are involved in this.